I'm wearing this shirt because Richard Brake is in this movie. Hey, Richard. Those that know, you know.
See, I was making the connection that two of our actors in this film are in Halloween sequels.
Yeah.
So.
And nobody told me Barbara Crampton is in this movie. Barbara Crampton!
I'm not entirely sure Barbara Crampton knew she was in this movie. She's in like 4 scenes.
Great. I think that's true. Let's talk about it. Let's get started with The Last Stop in Yuma County.
Welcome to the show. I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
Hey, thanks for finding us. Thanks for watching. And for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Another way you can support the show?
Patreon.com/KyleNickOnFilm.
Yeah, join the Patreon. There's a great deals, great content. We just put some new stuff out there and an opportunity to tell us what movies we can review for future episodes. Or, of course, a shout out to you as well. Kyle and I, of course, members of the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. We got some new members of the Film Critics. So, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about an indie film that just came out from 2024. It's Last Stop in Yuma County. What's going on?
So the gas truck hasn't arrived yet, leaving several patrons stranded at a remote diner. One of them has a case full of money from a recent bank robbery. Now, each patron is called upon to make a choice. Get your hands on the money or fight for survival.
Is Richard Brake ever going to do like a romantic comedy or anything?
I think he did. That was Game of Thrones, The Night King.
Or just a creepy guy in, what's that Nick Cage movie? Mandy, right. All right, so you set up your, if you have a small budget, set up your set where you can just stay all day, and then when you're done shooting, you can just lock everything up and then come back and reshoot it. You could call this movie Trapped in Yuma County, or Trapped, because that's kind of the arm, and you could put that in every story. Director Francis, how do you say it?
Gallupi?
Yeah, he's kind of like my same kind of flavor that I have. Like the oldies movies, the oldies cars, the oldies scenarios. Obviously, it's supposed to take place something like early 80s, late 70s, maybe. Maybe it's a retro 90s kind of a feel to it. I love that we don't really have a sense of timeline with this.
Yeah, it seems like we're pre-cell phone at the very least, although that could just be the fact that we're stranded in a remote location, so we don't have our cell phones out because we can't get a signal. I mean, that's kind of the thing I was surprised about, was this is an easy spot where you could actually have people with cell phones not being able to use them, but, this works as well.
Independent film guru Jim Cummings is famous for doing Thunder Road, and he's really a promoter of making your own movies and really a supporter of filmmakers on social media. Makes a surprise movie just acting in this.
Yeah, I think he executive produced the final product, but yeah, just a lead performance. In fact, I was convinced before starting the movie that he had written and directed, and that was something that had happened,
Yeah, it was my automatic reflex.
It kind of stood out to me that he was just, hanging out being the knife salesman, the character without a character name.
Which is interesting, because you see, everybody's got I love the play, because, of course, it's a bank robbery, if you haven't talked about the plot, and everybody has guns, and he's the knife salesman. It's like, obviously, it's almost like going to a gunfight with a knife, right? Yeah. And, of course, you're not the, heroic person at the end.
Yeah. And it also gives credence then to, Chekhov's knife collection, which, I am a big fan of whenever Chekhov brings his face around.
Okay, so you have Jocelyn Donahue. I don't really know anything about her.
So she actually got her start with The House of the Devil, which was a Ty West film. She was the lead actress in that film. Really, really cool, moody little horror film from the late aughts. But now, she's gotten a lot of work with James Wan. She was in Insidious Chapter 2. She was in Furious 7. Right. Dr. Sleep recently as well.
It's interesting to note, and if you haven't seen the movie yet, I think the script's kind of tight. I think the dialogue's kind of refreshing. It feels natural how everybody is playing about. But it's interesting, he bookends this with birds. And I'll get back to a little bit later in the anthology of kind of birds, because, like I said, they're all trapped in this kind of, and then you see the beginning of the chapter, almost like a David Lynch kind of a thing. You said just a bird that flies off, but then at the end you have the same kind of sequence of birds flying.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a metaphor of what he's trying to express throughout the whole movie of confinement and the opportunity.
Yeah, if you look at every character in the film, there is, every character who is fleshed out enough is a character who is trapped, looking for flight, looking for gas, looking for something to kind of get them out.
Yeah.
You can see that in Jim Cummings' character. You can see he doesn't like his job. He's not good at his job.
His personal life sucks.
His personal life sucks. With Jocelyn Donahue, you get the sense that Charlotte is not entirely happy in her marriage. That this
right.
business is failing. Her husband and her don't seem to have a tremendous closeness. You've got Faison Love, who plays Vernon. He's the guy who runs the gas station. He's sleeping upstairs. He's literally spending his entire life at this gas station with very little interaction with people. Everyone in the film is looking for something, including our main bank robbers and our young couple who's looking to maybe get their hands on the cash.
And everybody, I love how you present that there's certain things that they do that you think, how stupid, or they think they're more clever than they really are.
Yeah.
And that's tough to do for writing.
Yeah, it's hard because usually it just comes off people doing stupid stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Richard Brake's character, who I think is like the gravity of it. Every time he's in a scene, you're like, okay, what menacing thing you're going to do.
Yeah.
Even though you're just playing a song in the jukebox.
Yeah. He's Richard breaking things.
Right. But everybody, it's almost like they overthink things. I don't say they're stupid, but they're over-analytic things, and they just have an opportunity to break out, but it seems their characters always put an extra obstacle in the way of getting to what they want to do.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is, why would you rob a bank and just go to get a job?
Yeah.
Right? Or why didn't you quit your salesman job because obviously you don't like it and do something else?
Spend time with your child, you know? Yeah.
And so everybody is, even though they're physically trapped, they're more psychologically trapped in their confinements, and they kind of meet all the same together.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot, and you get that kind of boilerplate, almost, you know, like it reminded me of elements of kind of like Night of the Living Dead or From Dusk Till Dawn, Demon Knight, you know, films where they kind of, people are all clustered together and there's a villainous force. Usually in those films it's coming in. This is one where there's a villainous force inside, and we don't even know the villainous forces that are surrounded by him. It's got a great character beat. Every character in the film is given just enough to survive, basically, in terms of character writing, but you have some certain characters that kind of pop a little bit more.
Right.
Right when I say there's not much that I would chop out of this film. There's not much trimming to do.
No, the interdict of the boyfriend, girlfriend who just don't know how to navigate their life and think that if they just get a bunch of cash, they'll solve a bunch of problems, even though they can't even figure out how to get
You got to know how to use it still. It's kind of like when you get your hands on a gun. You got to know how to use it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's a lot of people unprepared for what's about to take place. And I appreciated that. I appreciated that we have our, like, a Reservoir Dogs moment, if you will. This feels very Quentin Tarantino-esque, you know?
Yeah, I love because we have the standoff and we're like, all right, everybody's gonna just maybe put their guns down. We have a little more exposition, but there's a consequence for the standoff. I really enjoy that part of the movie.
Yeah, my one fault with the standoff is I felt like I didn't see certain characters die who did. Like I had this moment where I had to rewind and kind of rewatch it once more because I was like, I feel like I missed stuff happening there. So I feel like this is a case where the standoff, I actually think a half couple of frames more for each shot, just so that the audience can take in that information, because it happens very quickly. It's one of those things I didn't think it was going to happen because the film feels boilerplate, but it also feels unexpected.
So a couple weeks ago, we reviewed a movie called Night Shift, and Sam Raimi from that movie is working with that director, and we have the same thing with this. Sam Raimi actually hired this director to do another Evil Dead, if I heard.
Yeah. He's licensed to do another Evil Dead film, so that's exciting.
Yeah. So obviously Sam's seen some of the same kind of talents with these kind of independent films that kind of not really a big home runs, but you can see the marquee of talent working with them.
Yeah, I hope we kind of see Sam Raimi as like a shepherd for that franchise, in that he brings in people who have like a good credit, and kind of gives them a launching point. Because the nice thing about the Evil Dead franchise is it's so simple.
Yeah.
You know, it's big and goopy, and there's a killer book and there's monsters. Like it's so simple to put your stamp on it. And I think this is a case where this feels like a Quentin Tarantino movie through the lens of someone else. You know, like one of his earlier films through the lens of this Francis Galuppi guy.
Yeah, and you take interesting shots of just like on the ground, the car pulling in the dirt flies. You get the sense of the texture of the environment with just a simple shot like that. You get the cafe just looking very unsanitary, unclean, but the simple shots of those that don't really have actors in them because you're in a confined space, but you want to enhance the story. So that's a clever maneuver. You also have these great overhead shots. Looks like they took the ceiling fan out and just put that up there.
Yeah.
Because you're confined space of like where else can you do? But that gives a nice view of like this is the scope of it. So very limitations for film, but you go to the max of how do you explore it.
Yeah, the cinematography in this film reminded me a lot of another 2024 release, Challengers, in that they had like a space to work with. You know, in that film, it's a tennis court, but the way they use the camera takes advantage of every single viewpoint you can have on that court. And that's how I felt this cinematography was. It was from Mac Fliskin, who actually was the cinematographer on a film called Off Season, which also starred Jocelyn Donahue. And so he's shooting this film, and what I think Francis and him both have is they create this confidence and this trust in the audience that every single piece of moving,
Yeah.
tools, moving characters, moving plot threads, everything is going to be resolved. Every setup has payoff. When one of the characters is trying to break into the Pinto, and he drops that, he drops the piece underneath the vehicle, and someone's going to eventually grab that and use it as a weapon.
Right.
Like it's there, and you trust them in that way. There's not just
trust as
anything
a filmmaker
wasted.
in a story that eventually that would emerge, and you bank that in your memory
Exactly.
as you watch it. Like, that is there.
It felt like drawing a card and being like, okay, Ace of Spades, we're going to hold that, and we're going to play it when it's right.
Yeah.
There was a very level of comfort that I had watching the film, knowing that I could trust them, and I had that trust within about 10 minutes. And I think that's a really important thing for people who are investing 90 minutes of their life in your movie, is that they should trust that they're going to get something out of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have here.
Interesting motley of characters. Everybody has their own distinct personalities, distinct backgrounds, and they all kind of mesh. The dialogue doesn't seem like it's forced, even though you get a bunch of heavy-handed exposition, but it feels natural to come out. The scenes are framed up. I think it's just a really good, solid movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be still maintained in my top 10, but I'm going to tell you, guys, go see it.
Yeah, it's popped into my top 10 of the year for now.
Right.
It's in that
I don't
lower
know if it's
portion,
good,
but
right.
like it is a very solid movie. It is, again, it's giving you exactly what you want. And what I appreciate, we brought this up, but I want to come back to this again too, about characters making stupid decisions. I'm a big defender of people in tense situations being stupid, because people are stupid when things are going well. When things get tense, that is when you have the blonde running up the staircase instead of running out the door in the horror film. People make dumb choices, and I think you see that a lot with Jim Cummings' characters, making dumb choices, but you understand why he made every one of the choices he made in this film.
Right, and I
totally,
he sold me right when he was going to call 911 and like.
And as a viewer too, in that moment you would have that same question going through your head.
There's money in there, nobody knows I'm here, and if I just take the car, I'm out.
You can see every choice that those characters made as something that you would at least consider.
Perfect. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. It has this flavor of very mid-90s nostalgia for those 70s, 80s films, even though it's new.
Yeah, it's funny because 10 years ago we had a nostalgia for the 80s, and now we have a nostalgia for the 90s, but we have some nostalgia for the 90s that is for the 70s, and we're just decade hopping at this point.
It has this flavor like Truth and Consequences, New Mexico, Kiefer Sutherland's movie. A lot of these road dangerous movies that we had in the 90s, like Keys of Tulsa, something like that. These very roady movies.
Yeah, and if you want to know like the inspirations for this film, I think you can look no further than Gene Jones, who plays Robert. He's the older gentleman who sits down, who has the gun in his pocket. Yeah. Because he's been in films like the Coen Brothers, No Country for Old Men, which feels very connected to this. Right. He was in The Hateful Eight with Tarantino, which feels kind of like thematically connected to this. Like
I think it's his personal gun in the movie, right?
Yeah. So I think you put Gene Jones in a movie, and I think that's the vibe you're getting throughout the entire film. So look at him as an indicator.
Another influence, and then check it out, Albino Alligator. It's kind of a city version of this movie. It came out in 1997, directed by Kevin Spacey. In that, the bank robbers are fleeing the cops, but they run into a bar, and they lock everybody in until the cops go away from the standoff. Gary Sinise is in that movie. Very well casted. William Fletcher's in that movie. So if you have an opportunity, check out that movie if you like the same kind of premise from 1996.
Well, awesome.
Yeah. So that's our movie. Hope you enjoy it. Keep the conversation going. If you have an opportunity to see it, put a comment down below or like or subscribe.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. You can check out all my film reviews, including an early review of Bad Boys Ride or Die, which actually has an albino alligator in it, over at goatfilmreviews.com.
Thanks for watching.